Okay, I want to say something that goes against everything we're told about healthy relationships.
My favorite kind of opening.
Some of the longest, most solid relationships I've seen up close, the ones that are still standing decades later, are between people who fight regularly, loudly, about real things.
And some of the quietest, most conflict-free relationships I've seen have ended, suddenly, without warning. Like something that looked completely fine from the outside just stopped.
And I've been thinking about why. Because we're given this idea that a good relationship is a peaceful one, that conflict is a sign of incompatibility, that if you argue a lot, something is wrong, that the goal is harmony.
But I think that idea is quietly destroying a lot of relationships because people mistake the absence of conflict for the presence of connection, and those are not the same thing.
Not even slightly the same thing. And tonight, I want to talk about why couples who fight the right way, for the right reasons, sometimes last longer than the ones who never fight at all.
Because the fighting isn't the problem. What's underneath the fighting is the whole story.
So let's start with what fighting actually means in a relationship, because I think it gets flattened into conflict bad, peace good, and that framing misses almost everything important.
Fighting means you're still engaged. You still care enough to argue. You still believe the relationship is worth the discomfort of honesty.
Exactly. And there's a term researchers use, emotional bids. Every time one person in a relationship makes a bid for connection, shares something, asks something, reaches out in some way, the other person either turns toward it, turns away from it, or turns against it.
Turning toward is engagement. Turning away is distance. Turning against is conflict.
But here's what the research found. Couples who turned against, who fought, who challenged, who pushed back, actually maintained more connection over time than couples who consistently turned away. Because turning away is indifference, and indifference is the actual killer of relationships.
Not conflict, indifference.
A couple that fights is still in contact, still reacting to each other, still occupying emotional space in each other's lives. A couple that has gone quiet, that has stopped fighting because they've stopped caring enough to fight, that couple is already halfway gone.
And from the outside, the quiet couple looks healthier, looks more mature, looks like they have it together.
While the fighting couple gets raised eyebrows and concerned questions. Are you two okay? You seem intense.
When actually, they might be the most honest couple in the room. But I want to be careful here, because I think there's a version of this that becomes a justification for genuinely harmful dynamics. Not all fighting is equal. Not all conflict is healthy. There's a real difference between fighting that connects and fighting that destroys.
That's the most important distinction in this entire conversation, and it comes down to what the fighting is actually about and how it's done.
John Gottman, the relationship researcher, spent decades studying couples, and what he found was that it wasn't the presence or absence of conflict that predicted whether a relationship lasted, it was the ratio and the style.
The ratio of positive to negative interactions. For every one difficult exchange, stable couples had roughly 5 positive ones. The conflict wasn't absent, it was contained within a larger context of genuine warmth and respect.
So the fighting isn't the variable. The baseline is the variable.
Exactly. And then there are what Gottman called the 4 horsemen, the 4 patterns of conflict that actually predict relationship breakdown with remarkable accuracy.
Criticism, attacking the person rather than the behavior.
Contempt, which is the most damaging. Eye-rolling, dismissiveness, the quiet communication that you think less of this person than they deserve.
Defensiveness, refusing to take any responsibility, turning every accusation into a counter-accusation.
And stonewalling, shutting down completely, going silent, withdrawing so totally that the other person is left arguing with a wall.
And what's interesting is that none of those are about the volume of the argument. None of them are about how loud or how often.
A couple can fight loudly and passionately and still not do any of those four things. And a couple can have quiet, controlled disagreements that are absolutely full of contempt. And the contempt is what kills it. I think there's something else that fighting does in a healthy relationship that doesn't get talked about enough. It builds trust.
That sounds counterintuitive.
It is counterintuitive, but think about it. If you've never seen someone angry with you, if your relationship has never been tested by real disagreement, you don't actually know what they're like under pressure. You don't know if they fight fair. You don't know if they come back after conflict. You don't know if the relationship can survive difficulty.
So it's all built on a kind of untested foundation.
Exactly. But if you fought, if you've been through something genuinely difficult together and come out the other side, you have evidence. You have proof of concept. You know this person fights fair. You know they come back. You know the relationship can hold weight.
And that knowledge is one of the most stabilizing things that can exist in a relationship. The certainty that the hard moments won't end it.
Which is why couples who have navigated real conflict together often describe their relationship as more secure than couples who haven't, not despite the conflict, because of what the conflict proved.
That it survived, that they survived it together. I want to talk about the couples who don't fight, because I think sometimes the absence of conflict is genuinely peaceful. Two people who are deeply compatible and handle things well. And sometimes it's something else entirely.
Sometimes it's avoidance. One or both people have decided, consciously or not, that the relationship isn't a safe place to bring real feelings, that certain topics are off the table, that conflict isn't worth the risk.
And so things accumulate, unspoken, unresolved, building up in layers beneath the surface of a relationship that looks perfectly fine.
And then something small triggers something large, and the explosion seems completely out of proportion. And both people are confused because they thought they were doing well. They thought the absence of fighting meant something good.
When actually they were just managing, performing okay at each other instead of actually being okay.
And the really painful version of this is when one person has been swallowing things for years, adjusting, accommodating, choosing peace over honesty so consistently that they've completely lost track of what they actually need. And one day they just leave or stop showing up emotionally. And the other person has no idea it was coming because there were no fights, no warning signs.
Because the warning signs were always there. They were just dressed up as peace.
Silence isn't always contentment. Sometimes silence is just a person who has decided they're not worth fighting for.
That's a painful thing to sit with.
So, what does healthy conflict actually look like? Because I think people either avoid it entirely or they do it in ways that damage rather than resolve.
I think healthy conflict starts with a belief that the other person is not the enemy, even when you're furious with them, even when they've genuinely done something wrong. The foundation is, I am frustrated with you and I am still on your side.
Which is incredibly hard to hold on to in the middle of a real argument, when everything in you wants to win.
But that's the thing. There is no winning in a relationship argument. There's only resolving and not resolving. If you win the argument and your partner leaves it feeling defeated and unseen, you haven't won anything. You've just damaged something.
The goal isn't to be right. The goal is to be understood and to understand.
Which sounds simple. It is not simple, especially when you're activated, when the nervous system is in threat mode and every instinct is telling you to defend or attack.
And I think that's where the repair matters as much as the fight itself.
Gottman's research found that couples who made repair attempts during conflict, who could say something to de-escalate, to reintroduce warmth, to acknowledge the other person's experience, even mid-argument, those couples did significantly better long-term.
A moment of humor in the middle of a fight. Reaching out and touching someone's hand, saying, "I know this is hard for both of us."
Those small gestures, those tiny interruptions in the hostility, they're not weakness, they're skill. And the couples who have them, who've developed that instinct together, those are the couples that last.
Because they've learned how to fight without forgetting why they're there.
I think the most honest thing we can say tonight is, don't be afraid of conflict. Be afraid of contempt. Be afraid of the silence that isn't peace. Be afraid of a relationship where nothing is ever difficult because both people have quietly stopped believing the difficult things are worth saying.
Fight for the relationship by being willing to fight in the relationship. Not viciously, not to wound, but honestly, with the full weight of what you actually feel.
Because a partner who fights with you is a partner who is still there, still engaged, still choosing the discomfort of honesty over the comfort of distance.
And a relationship that can hold your full truth, including the inconvenient parts, the frustrated parts, the parts that need things to be different. That's a relationship that might actually last.
Not because it's perfect, because it's real.
Because it's real, and real things can be repaired. Perfect things can only be broken.
If tonight made you think about something you've been swallowing, some conversation you've been avoiding, maybe that's worth paying attention to. And not to start a fight, just to be honest about what you actually need.
Thanks for being up with us.
3 a.m. Talks. We'll see you next time.